Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the lefts, we go up to the rights, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Hey guys, today's date, February 26, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, guys, gotta let you know that we are a family-friendly podcast, at least we try to be. So sometimes we try to watch your language, but sometimes words do fly. As well as there may be things shown tonight that might be just a little too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, we would be remiss on this podcast if we did not acknowledge what's going on right now with Trump's favorite friend Putin, that is right now invading Ukraine, and not acknowledging the Ukraine citizens right now that are not taking it lying down, especially from a group of soldiers that were actually stationed on an island and gave some of the most memorable words to ever say to a Russian warship that's telling you to lay down your arms. And despite it contains profanity, you won't hear it, it's bleeped out, but it deserves to be played.
Rebecca, I want to ask you about this audio tape that has emerged purporting to be an exchange between Ukrainian soldiers defending an island in the Black Sea, cussing at a Russian warship before being killed in battle. I want you to listen to this.
Корабль. Управление. Я русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. По избежанию кровопролития и неоправданных жертв. В противном случае по вам будет нанесен штурмовой удар. Длинный остров. Я русский корабль. Повторяю. Предлагаю сложить оружие, сдаться. Иначе по вам будет нанесен удар. Как поняли меня? Прием.
Wow, the Ukrainians are defiant, or they aren't backing down.
Two things were certain going into this, and this is what the U.S. had assessed. First, that Russia had the massively superior military and the armed forces built up around Ukraine, and that Ukraine's military might not be able to hold out all that long, whether that's days or weeks is unclear, and the Pentagon wasn't going to get into how this was going for the Russians. But the other thing that was clear was that if the Russians chose to become an occupying force after this invasion, the Ukrainians would put up one hell of a fight, an insurgency against a Russian occupation, perhaps against a Russian puppet government. And that spirit there, that will to fight, that will to stand back against Russia and to be Ukrainians, that's what you're hearing in that video. And that's what
you hear that loud and clear in that video. And those souls that were on that island, that were on a military island, did speak out and defend themselves. And people talk about patriotism and all that stuff, dying for one's country. You hear it all the time with the conservative folks. They come take this gun from my cold dead hands. Don't tread on me. We usually disregard that with a plain assault, with pretty much with just a lot of BS, just because it's easy to sit there and say from a place of comfort, that for the simple fact of the matter that, oh yeah, it's only because, you're safe and that you're all red, white, and blue and you're all pro-America that you will gladly sit there and say that you will fight and die for your country. It's easy to say it from a place of comfort. Meanwhile, across the pond, there is a country right now that's literally fighting, that citizens are fighting, taking up arms and not taking it down lightly. And they don't need a bunch of mainstream media to prove themselves. And again, it's one of those things where, you can't help but feel contempt, and you should feel contempt for a country that Putin decides he wants to invade for reasons above his own, and the fact that the world is starting to wake up and is starting to say there is something that needs to be done about this. And I would say in the same sense, like America, we are not the world police. I still believe there's other countries out there that could go right along with us. Especially the Organization for NATO. NATO could literally activate its forces to actually help with Ukraine to stave off the Russian invasion. But you can't help but feel like it's the 1980s all over again. But I'm gonna be honest with you, it does. I always love to see that type of resilience, especially when you're over the radio and you're being told to surrender to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, and you just told a heavily armed Russian warship to pretty much go F yourself. In my mind, legend. But speaking of conservatives and the fact of, the craziness they're taking up, unfortunately, the CPAC is this weekend and started off today. And guess what they talked about?
Tonight, with Russia actively attacking Ukraine, the Republican Party's posture toward Russia moving forward now a focus.
Is it any wonder that Vladimir Putin feels emboldened to do whatever the heck it is he wants to do?
GOP party leaders converging in Florida this weekend for CPAC, the long-running conservative conference.
Let me welcome you to the freest state in these United States.
Ahead of former President Trump's keynote speech slated for Saturday, several other potential 2024 presidential contenders taking the stage, though Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Texas Senator Ted Cruz, potential frontrunners, making not a single mention of Russia's invasion, instead focusing on politics at home.
As Biden flounders, Florida is leading on issue after issue.
We are taking our country back. We are standing up to power. We are defending liberty.
Other conservative influencers downplaying the invasion's significance.
U.S. southern border matters a lot more than the Ukrainian border.
The Republican Party has long taken a hard stance toward Russia, but then came Donald Trump's candidacy.
If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him. I've already said he is really very much of a leader.
And his ascension to the White House, where he refused to speak boldly against Vladimir Putin.
I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
Trump just earlier this week calling Putin a genius and savvy.
There's some in your party who have offered soft praise for Vladimir Putin. What do you say to them?
Oh, I mean, that's a mistake. I mean, listen, Putin is our enemy. Let's be clear about that. Vladimir Putin should not be able to roll in and invade another country and get away with it.
But now other Republicans could challenge Trump for the 2024 presidential nomination, leading to high stakes here in Orlando. Activists here.
When we're looking at 2024, who do you got?
Trump, of course.
Trump. If he runs, you're behind him.
Yeah.
Already weighing in on their party's brewing primary battle.
What about Ron DeSantis?
I think he's a wonderful guy. He has what it takes, but I think he needs a couple more years until he makes a full commitment to the presidential race.
If President Trump steps in and runs, I think that the party will be in complete support of him.
And Vaughn Hilliard joins us now live from Orlando. Vaughn, I understand you just spoke with Senator Ted Cruz after his speech. You mentioned in your story Cruz didn't talk about Russia or Ukraine on stage, but what did he say to you about it?
Yeah, I did, Gabe. And he said in reference to the Biden administration's response this week, quote, too little, too late, saying that he and the Senate have been pressing for sanctions to be placed on the company that is building that major Russian gas pipeline, which Biden had declined to do up until this week. The big question, though, for Cruz and every lawmaker, Republican and Democrat now is what's next? Tomorrow here at CPAC.
So again, that was just today. I'm sorry, day before yesterday. Sorry about that. Keep forgetting we're Saturday. But again, no mention of the outside world. But what is CPAC for? CPAC for is if you are conservative and you're trying to get nominated or get seen or get votes, that is the best place to go. And as long as you say the stuff that they want you to say, down with Democrats, down with the liberals, down with progression, take our country back, defend liberty. Sounds all stupid, but yeah, you'll be surprised how many people will jump on that mess. Not surprising that, of course, with the Ukraine situation, that nobody is talking about it. Very few are talking about it. And I don't expect Cruz to talk about it because last time Cruz faced a very terrible situation, he was on a plane to Cancun. Just saying. At the same time, I'm not really surprised about Josh Hawley because he sat there and he didn't mention anything. He doesn't mention anything when speaking to the crowd, but yeah, when speaking to the press, oh well, let's be clear, Putin is our enemy. Yet you're trying to impose sanctions. Now, for a lot of y'all to understand, sanctions really do not do very much in the way of commerce. I mean, sanctions have never stopped another country from invading another country ever. It's just a way of them sitting there saying, it's a way of most countries sitting there saying, we've done something. But I know for a lot of people, it's like, well, we don't need military action unless American civilians are in the way. I mean, we ran into that in Afghanistan, and that was a mess. Even though I still say Biden made the right decision in ending the war in Afghanistan and leaving, because it was a war that was started under false pretenses. We lost too many American lives. We didn't gain anything except putting oil subsidiaries in place. And when we left, pretty much they came back and took back what we already gained. So what did we learn in those last 2 decades? That we need to stop getting into endless wars. Now, do I think this is an endless war? Do I think that between Ukraine and Russia is this an endless war? I can't say that. I do know that at this point, I see a bigger country that has more means, resources, and firepower simply going after another country because they believe they have rights to it. And that alone is wrong. But it shouldn't just take one country. It should take several countries to come together and say, no, this ain't happening. Like I said before, U.S. is not the world police. But I don't expect conservatives to sit there and usually they're chicken hawks. Oh, they were all for the war in Afghanistan, still continuing the war in Afghanistan, still sending plenty of troops over there, as long as it's not their own kids. But when it comes to the fact that it's a war that they didn't start, or it's something that they want to start, either they will place blame or they will sit there and blame others for not doing something that they would have done in their place. But it's CPAC, and I keep telling you guys this: the midterms are coming. The Republicans are already not only screwing with voting rights and laws in multiple states, they are already trying to go after early voting. They're already trying to go after mail-in voting. They're trying to basically target the minority voters who depend on these services. And they're trying to make it harder for them to vote. And trust me, for a lot of these laws, they've already went into effect. And we've already seen it, especially in Texas with early voting. People already having issues with that. You don't think the same thing's going to happen in Florida? Which, by the way, in Texas and in Florida, Trump won by double digits. The same two states that say we're putting these laws in to prevent voting fraud. Although at this point, not one case of voting fraud has came up since that's been brought up. So I tell you all this because, again, it's gonna, as we get closer to election day, it's only going to intensify. And these Republicans, and I said it before and I'll say it again, Republicans will have an easier time convincing idiots to vote for them because they depend on these idiots to have amnesia and not remember what it was like when they were running the show. Versus Democrats, which again, Democrats don't have a lot of the wing column right now. A lot of their campaign promises didn't get made. A lot of the laws and a lot of the bills and laws outside the COVID-19 hate bill, that was the only one that was passed. Keep in mind, Voting Rights Act didn't get passed. John Lewis Act didn't get passed. George Floyd Police Reform Act didn't get passed. I mean, I can keep going down the line. Build Back America, somewhere in between. Beyond the COVID-19 anti-hate bill and the infrastructure package and the America Rescue Plan, which seems like years ago now, they gave us a single $1,400 check. That is all the Democrats can really preach about. Not a lot in the wing column. And you're going to try to convince these same voters who gave you some majority last time to keep trusting you. As I said before, and I hate to say it, Republicans have an easier time convincing idiots than Democrats have a hard time pleading their case when they have more losses than wins. And they have the majority. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, we do have some good news. President Biden did select his next Supreme Court justice pick to replace Supreme Court Justice Meyer, and it is Judge Ketanji Brown. And if you don't know who she is, well, here's a little bit about her.
Ketanji Brown Jackson already knows her way around the Supreme Court. She was a law clerk for Justice Stephen Breyer, the man she's been nominated to succeed. She's now a judge on the Federal Appeals Court in Washington, confirmed for that position just 8 months ago.
She's an amazing person.
One of her supporters has been Paul Ryan, the former Republican Speaker of the House. His in-laws and hers are related. Judge Jackson was born in Washington, but grew up in Miami, where her mother was a school administrator and her father was a lawyer for the school board.
I would sit at the dining room table doing my homework with my father. He had all of his law books stacked up, and I had all of my coloring books stacked up. And when I think back to those times, there really is no question that my interest in the law began that early on.
She graduated from Harvard and Harvard Law, and that's where she met her husband, Patrick, now a surgeon. They have 2 daughters, ages 17 and 21. If confirmed, she'd be the first Black woman ever on the Supreme Court, and the first justice since Thurgood Marshall, who retired 30 years ago, with significant experience defending accused criminals. She's a former public defense lawyer. For the past 8 years, she's been a federal trial judge, and at her confirmation hearing for the appeals court, she was asked what role race would play in her decisions.
I don't think that race plays a role in the kind of judge that I have been and that I would be. It's sort of like the Oliver Wendell Holmes quote that the life of the law is not logic, it's experience.
And at age 51, she'd be one of the youngest on the current court, second only to Amy Coney Barrett, who just turned 50 last month.
So again, I do like this. I do like this pick. I cannot knock it. Again, if you already wondering, yes, conservatives already start squawking. They already sit there and said, well, the radical left has won over Biden again, and it's conservatives. Keep in mind, this is also the same side that not only squeezed in my opinion, a very flawed and possibly a man that is convicted that could have actually done sexual assault. And now you know who I'm talking about, Squeegee. I'm talking about that guy whose FBI investigation was swept under the rug by Trump. Let's not also forget Amy Coney Barrett, who was basically fast fooded in right after the late RBG had passed. And again, this is the same side that has the nerve to literally talk about us, the first ever Black woman to be considered to be elected to the highest court in the land. Why do you think that is? Because when it comes to Republicans have this blind, I'm not racist, but at the same time, I'm against everything progressive type thing. Because that's the one thing, here's the one thing they want to say. Because if Supreme Court Justice nominee Kajani was similar to a Candace Owens, if you will, Republicans have no issue. Why? She speaks their tune. Amy Coney Barrett speaks Republicans' tunes. There was never a question about her. Oh, her morals, everything else, even though she's deeply religious. She's deeply religious. And there's one thing that's always concerned me, that nothing wrong with a religious person, but if your religion is going to dictate the law, if your religion is going to come first before the law does, as you are a judge, yeah, it's going to bother me a little bit. Because are you really judging me by the law? Or are you judging me by your religion that I may or may not believe in? So again, this is history in the making. I mean, she does have to be confirmed in the Senate, which at this point is going to be an uphill battle, because as Democrats are trying to get judges on the Supreme Court in their favor, keep in mind the Supreme Court is still leaning to the right by a mile. So if I was the Democrats, and I kept saying this all the time, you don't have to have just 9 justices on the Supreme Court. You can pad all the way up to almost 29. Why not? At least at that point, we can get some things done, because with the current conservative court there it's right now, you know what they've done so far? They've pretty much circumvented Roe versus Wade. They've pretty much allowed, not only circumvented Roe versus Wade, you've made it harder for women to literally get access to birth control. You've made it difficult for educators to do their jobs, because now parents have says everything. And then let's not also forget that when other people are challenging that aren't Republican driven, they get driven down into lower courts. Yes, the conservative court does need to be looked at again, because I fear that Roe versus Wade has already been circumvented. What's next? Brown versus Board of Education? I mean, we used to chuckle about that, but we're not chuckling anymore. The simple fact of the matter is we need to balance the Supreme Court out and stop it from going right. But as we move along, guys, I did want to cover a couple of quick stories that we have for this weekend. I did want to cover this one that thankfully a judge did have the right sense of mind to say that the parents of the Michigan school shooting basically the parents, James and Jennifer Crumling, will be facing charges of allowing their son Ethan, remember the kid that basically went to school because his parents purchased him a handgun and allowed and trained him how to use it, and yet at the same time he was caught with ammo. And he was talking about it and dreaming about it. And the mom sat there and said, I'm not mad at you. I'm just mad that you got caught. Yeah. And remember the parents that tried to run and tried to say we're not running, but yes, you were. Yes. So they finally are about to stand trial. And that is great because they should, as they will be facing 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. But it still needs to happen. These parents above all else still need to pay, because you know what? That at that point they had a hand that they could have stopped their son and they didn't. But I am definitely not losing sleep over that. But I'll be curious to see how that ruling goes, as Ethan as they're trying to move Ethan Crumley to a juvenile court. I hope it doesn't happen. He needs to be tried as an adult, because they said he has a fascination with violence. Yeah. That's the kid that should not be in juvenile. He should be an adult, where he should be in an adult jail where he can be watched. But speaking of other court news, this actually came a little late, a little late day before yesterday, and I'm surprised this happened. I didn't think it was going to happen, but you know, sometimes we get a W.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Breaking news out of Minneapolis. The jury has reached a verdict in the federal trial of those 3 former police officers accused of violating George Floyd's civil rights. The jury has found all 3 men guilty of violating Floyd's rights by not providing medical aid and failing to stop their senior officer, Derek Chauvin, from using excessive force. For more on this, I want to bring in ABC's Alex Perez on the phone in St. Paul. Also, former homicide prosecutor and defense attorney Bernarda Villalona for more. Bernarda, let's start with you. Are you surprised by the verdict?
I'm not surprised by the verdict, because it was plain for all of us to see that you didn't need training, police training, to determine that George Floyd was crying out and was an immediate necessity of some kind of medical attention. So I'm not surprised. I'm glad that the jury arrived to the right verdict. They now have called these 3 former Minnesota police officers guilty because they are guilty for depriving the rights of George Floyd.
Alex, you have covered this case top to bottom for a year and a half now. What does a verdict like this mean for the Floyd family and also the people of Minneapolis?
Well, you know, Kira, the Floyd family has, of course, been following every single legal step very, very carefully. And this is what they wanted. They wanted to see a jury return a guilty verdict. Now, I want to dive in a little bit into what we're seeing happen. This jury made this decision in about 13 hours. They deliberated for about 13 hours. Testimony went for almost a month. So this decision came relatively quickly, Kira, and they had some complicated instructions before them. The jury instructions were about 38 pages, so they had a lot of things to go through here. And many thought the prosecutor really kind of faced an uphill battle here with these civil rights charges, because she had to prove that these officers willfully chose their actions. But while some thought it was an uphill battle, it seems the jury agreed with the prosecutor here. Now, just a quick reminder, we're talking about those other officers who were on the scene when George Floyd was murdered. And that's Officer Toe Tao. He's the one that was seen sort of corralling the crowd, keeping them away from George Floyd and the other officers. And then the 2 former officers, J. Alexander King and Thomas Lane, those are the 2 former officers seen sort of at George Floyd's legs and back. Now, all 3 were charged with failing to help George Floyd when he needed medical help, and King and Tao were charged with failing to stop Chauvin. Now, what we saw in this case, Kira, all 3 of them took the witness stand in their own defense, and all 3 of them squarely pointed the finger at Chauvin, saying he took over the scene, and they weren't aware of how serious the situation was when it came to George Floyd and kid's life. But clearly the jury here, Kara, not buying that argument, finding them guilty on all charges against them, federal charges here, Kara.
Clearly, Bernardo, prosecutors did a great job arguing that the officers had every opportunity to stop and help.
Exactly, Kara. You got to think this is not a situation that gets lasted a couple of seconds. We're not talking about a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. We are talking about 9 minutes and 29 seconds where Derek Chauvin was on the neck of George Floyd with people in the crowd crying and screaming for help, for the officers to do something. How many times did we hear the bystanders say, Tutel, you're not going to do anything? You're not going to do anything? He's not breathing. He's not moving. And that put all of those officers on notice about the desperate need of medical attention that George Floyd needed, and also a reason to stop Derek Chauvin from taking away the life of George Floyd.
And yeah, I mean, she's right on all accounts. It's the thing about it is that I did not expect that. I mean, now that they have been convicted, they will have sentencing. They may get up to life in prison. And that should serve as an example, because there's still many other cases out there that should get this type of attention, but don't. But it's nice to finally see that now almost 2 years, well, about to be 3 years later, that we're about to finally see George Floyd actually get the justice he deserves. Even more so that I just wish the George Floyd Police Reform Act, instead of it being killed by Tim Scott, the only black person on the Republican Party who killed it, you kind of wish that it kind of went forward to that way, because it would have revamped the way law enforcement is done in America, because it needs to be revamped. It needs to be redesigned. And I've been saying that for the longest time since this podcast has been up and running, that the only true chance going to happen is that, yes, that those in law enforcement need to learn that, yes, we are going to hold you accountable. If you're going to protect and serve your community, accountability comes with it. But again, we will see what the sentencing will be for those three officers. As we know, Derek Chauvin has already been sentenced, although now with those three associates, they also may be seeing very long prison terms, we hope. But meantime, with all this going on, COVID, CDC has updated the COVID mask mandate again, and I kind of feel like we're on this merry-go-round of mask on, mask off.
Is just updating its mask guidance. Good news, most of you can ditch them. But of course, there is a catch. The agency says they're only recommending you get rid of your mask if COVID hospitalizations are low where you live. Do I have to tell you this is a big deal? It's a big deal, right? Because it's a place this country has not been in for a while. The last time the CDC changed its mask guidance was back in July. But now you have COVID cases going down pretty dramatically. All but 3 states are seeing a drop of at least 25% of new cases. Check out your screen. Take a look at where we were a month ago. We were seeing something like 750,000 cases a day. Now look at it, 75,000. Hospitalizations are also down 44% across the country in the last couple of weeks. So the agency behind the scenes, based on our reporting, has been working for weeks to come up with new guidelines. And their announcement comes, I don't know, if you look at what states are doing, a little on the later side, because already we've seen states around the country dropping mostly their mask mandates. Dr. John Torres helps break down this new guidance from the CDC. Dr. John, do what you do so well and plain English it for me. When do I need to wear a mask indoors and when don't I? How do we know this?
And Hallie, first off, you're right, because they did last do the recommendations back in July. But at that time, they were using cases as metrics, cases and positivity rates. Well, now fast forward to this time frame, and what they're saying is it's really hard to use cases as the metric because Omicron has kind of put a wrench in those works. And so instead, what they're looking at is hospitalizations, and they're looking at the amount of beds in hospitals that are taken up by COVID patients. In other words, what's the pressure in the hospitals, and using that as the metric. So what they're saying here is they're dividing it into 3 groups: low, medium, and high. If you're a low and medium group, for most of us, they're saying you do not have to wear masks indoors. Medium, if you're high risk, talk to your doctor about whether you should be wearing a mask anyway. But when you hit that high area of risk because of the hospitalizations and the beds that are taken up, They're saying that everybody should start wearing masks indoors. And so that's a big difference, the metrics they're using, and they're giving us a little better guidelines along the way. And I think if you look at it, the one big thing to remember is we are still 74,000 cases. We are still 1,700 deaths a day, unfortunately. But the big change here is the fact that over 70% of the country has some immunity to COVID. And the fact that this Omicron seems to be a little less dangerous than the other variants, and that's certainly helping out, Hallie.
I have to thank John, Dr. John. I'm candidly, I'm hopping on a flight later tonight, and I will be wearing a mask because that is what you do on planes, right? Because there is a mask mandate for federal transportation. It expires in a few weeks, I think middle of March. You now have this flight attendants unit that is pushing back, saying, they want that to be extended, basically. Is it too soon to talk about masking on planes, masking on trains, et cetera?
I think it's too soon to a certain extent for a very certain reason. And that's mainly because of what's happening on the international stage. Internationally, and it's hard to separate just domestic flyers happening domestically and those coming in from other countries. And in other countries, the mask mandates around the world are on airplanes everywhere, on public transportation, pretty much everywhere. And so I think that's one of the reasons we need to keep it here. Plus, it's hard to judge who's on their vaccination rate, who is staying on there, even though they're sick. Those can cause problems. And you are in close quarters, both at the airport, on the airplane, or at the train station and on the trains. And so I can see them pushing that back a few more weeks or a few more months until we get these cases even more under control. And then possibly doing the same thing of the low, medium, and high risks for flights here. But again, remember, this is a global stage we're working on. Yeah. And globally, there's still a lot of COVID out there. And so we need to make sure we protect ourselves around the world.
Jeff.
So long story short, I'm still wearing a mask. I kind of feel like we're kind of going this merry-go-round. And I say merry-go-round just because we did this before. Keep in mind, this is nothing new. We locked down. We only went out to work and grocery store if we needed to. Cases went down. We tried to go back out. We even tried to eat out. We tried to, try to do everything with the mask. And then concerts started back up. Venues started back up. And people who were unvaccinated came out just along with us. Cases spiraled right back up. We had to go back to mask again. And of course, I guess the only difference this time around with these super spreader events is that people wised up, got vaccinated, hopefully, wore masks, really took this thing seriously. And I think it got to a point now where enough hard-headed people finally got the hint that yes, you should be vaccinated. Yes, you should wear a mask. Do I think right now is the best time to take a foot off the gas? Again, this is why I listen to experts. I listen to people who are definitely more knowledgeable about the area than I am. So, but at the same time, the key word in that entire thing that they just said was, if the CDC cases are low in your area, and I live in Tennessee, we are one of the highest states with cases. So in my case, just because I know I'm in Tennessee and Tennessee's progressively backwards, mask is staying on until we literally have no trace of COVID. But hey, check out the percentages of COVID cases in your area, and you may be one of the lucky few. But if you're living in the South like me, you better keep your mask on, because let's be honest, there's a whole bunch of people out there who aren't vaccinated and will give you every other reason why in the world not to get vaccinated until they have to go to the hospital, which I find amazing. You won't believe the doctor gets you a vaccination, but it's the same doctor you're going to go to once you're sick. Make it make sense. But other things about making things make sense. Unfortunately, in Florida, they are moving forward with the "Do Not Say Gay" bill as it now has advanced to the Florida Senate.
Florida, the controversial "Don't Say Gay" bill is now on to the state Senate after clearing the House. That bill would stop any teaching about gender identity and sexuality until after the 3rd grade. NBC 6 South Florida reporter Christian Benavides joins us now with this story. Christian, this bill has faced a lot of backlash, we know. Is it a surprise that it passed in the Florida House, though?
Aaron, despite the backlash, it seemed almost inevitable that the bill would pass the House. It's now in the Senate's hands, so it's just a matter of time before it reaches the desk of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
On final passage of CS for House Bill.
Florida's so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill is now a step closer to becoming law. State House lawmakers passed the GOP-backed bill on Thursday in a 69-47 vote, with 7 Republicans joining most Democrats in voting against. A sole Democrat voted in favor. The bill reads in part that classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. Republican State Representative Joe Harding sponsored the bill, officially titled the Parental Rights in Education Bill.
And you have a choice. We have a choice to empower parents in Florida, or we have a choice to empower school districts. I'm asking for you to side with the side of parents in Florida.
Well, Republicans say that this bill is about parental rights. LGBTQ plus activists have been outspoken about the harm that this could do to LGBTQ plus youth. Brandon Wolf is with Equality Florida, an LGBTQ plus rights organization.
People like us are always age appropriate to recognize. Our community will not be erased. Let me make that clear. No matter what happens behind those doors, this community is not going anywhere. You cannot erase us.
The bill has caused nationwide backlash from Hollywood celebrities like Kerry Washington, who tweeted, horrified by what is happening in Florida. Children deserve to be who they want to be. To the White House, where President Biden tweeted his support for the LGBTQ plus community, writing that it's a hateful bill.
It sends a terrible message to our youth that there is something so wrong, so inappropriate, so dangerous about this topic that we have to censor it from classroom instruction.
For his part, Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has indicated his support for the bill, but hasn't yet explicitly said whether he would sign it.
Make no mistake, in Florida, the parents have a seat at the table. And we want to make sure that parents are involved in age-appropriate material.
State health.
Crazy, isn't it? Florida is winning the Hold My Beer Challenge at the expense of apparently some very religious yet confused parents, because they believe that if you expose your child to different things, that apparently it's going to turn them gay. It doesn't. If that was the case, it'd be a whole different paradigm we deal with right now. It's asinine. You would think children of anybody are the most understanding and accepting group out there, because kids don't see anything unless instructed or told to. A black child can play with a white kid. A black child can play with a Native American child, a Latinx child, Cuban, Puerto Rican, Brazilian, Russian, Japanese. Children don't care because children just play together. So you got to think about something. If all a kid sees is just another kid like themselves that is just in the same mindset, wouldn't that mean they're more inept of accepting things as they're explained? Because that's what a lot of parents out there, especially I say religiously repressed parents. Because you know why I say religiously repressed? If you sit there and ask them why they got an issue with the LGBTQ community, you know what the first thing they'll sit there and say? I don't have an issue with it. It's just against my religion. It's almost like robotic when it comes off. It's not it's against my religion. I just don't think it's natural. Really? You think it's natural to follow a book that you can't tell where the author came from? But again, I'm not surprised by that. This is what Florida does. Florida, especially Trump puppet DeSantis, because right now DeSantis is trying to do two things. One, secure a presidential bid. You don't think he's going to announce it? He will, because he's doing everything in the Trump playbook except showing his hand. That's why he's not going to sit there and say, I'm not showing my sport behind it, but in Florida, parents have a choice. You got to love riding that citrus line until he makes a decision. But that's not surprising. But again, this does harm the LGBTQ plus community, because the simple fact of the matter, they have to deal with this. When all they want is acceptance. They want acceptance and equality. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And yet in Florida, teachers are being hamstringed on what they can and cannot teach. At this point, if I was teachers, I would basically just say, look, go back to your parents and get homeschooled, because apparently they know more than me. Go. I'm not surprised educators are not leaving by the boatload. I really am not, considering that Florida did have a teacher shortage not too long ago. Imagine you being an educator in Florida now and having to worry about, the fact that you've cultivated a syllabus to teach young minds, and you have this one guy one parent or I should say Karen, who basically has who has all the experience of a Target store, is going to stand and tell you what you shouldn't be teaching their kids, or any kids for that matter. Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. And I can't blame them nor the LGBTQ community for feeling that way toward this bill, because it is a hateful bill. That's unfortunately at this rate looks like it's all going to become law, and that's messed up. But some other news I want to cover before we get to our feel good segment. Again, I like to say that unions do work, especially with Starbucks, because they did get another store did vote to unionize. This one was actually in Mesa, Arizona, where the vote was 25-3 in favor of the union, 3 only opposed. And again, this is going to join the already forming union, Starbucks Workers United, that will represent not only that store, but the other 2 stores in Buffalo and New York. So I always find it funny when they ask Starbucks, they ask the corporate company about this. Starbucks released a statement saying, in quote, "As we have said throughout, we will respect the process and will bargain in good faith, guided by our principles. We hope the union does the same." Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw right there was the cleanest PR of saying we do not like this. They said, well, we're going to go by our principles. We hope the union does the same. You know what they're pretty much saying? We don't like this. And guys, I cannot stress this enough. Corporations hate unions. They do. Because corporations don't have any accountability. There is nobody holding them accountable for the way they treat workers. Because especially if you're in the South, right to work is it's a joke. Number one, right to work has nothing. Right to work means nothing about being right to work. It just basically lets a company allows you to fire you for anything. And it does. If you could be, they say discrimination, but let's be honest. If one day my job decides that it doesn't like my hairstyle, it can terminate me for that, because it's a right to work state. They have the right to terminate my employment at any time. Now, one would think, they said, well, but the workers, this was their argument. Well, if the company can do so the workers can leave at any time too. Well, newsflash, genius. That's the whole idea of working. You're not tied to this job. You can leave the job at any time, whether you make it right to work or not. But that was the BS that they sold, especially to get corporations coming here, because you already see it happen. Amazon was one. Volkswagen was another. We're not too far off from Oracle coming here very soon. All of these right-to-work states are tax shelters for a lot of these corporations. Don't believe me? Check out Elon Musk. Where is he going right now? Texas. Where is the Samsung with their $1 billion infrastructure going to Texas? Probably about 10,000 jobs. They're going to the places where their money is sheltered, not where the hard workers are hired. So I've said this all the time. There's no such thing as corporate loyalty. Do what you need to do what you need to do for you and yours. But honestly, these corporations will cut you in a heartbeat and call it good business. But if you leave them when they don't want you to leave, they'll call you terrible workers. There is no such thing as corporate loyalty. That's why unions are needed, because unions make sure to hold the company accountable. Unions make sure that you get your 40 hours a week, your 40 hours a week, your paid time off and sick leave. That all came from unions. It didn't come from anywhere else. These were bargain-based things that were argued for unions, but that were actually eventually transferred to everywhere. Again, unions work. The last story I got, guys, before we get to our feel good segment is, again, I'm just not surprised about this one, but again, this is the reason why I say that the line between school and religion just keeps getting blurry, and I, for one, fear when it starts prejudicing into sports. This last story I got, guys, an Alabama high school team says they were forced to choose faith over a tournament game. Now, what actually happened was in the Alabama High School Athletics, excuse me, let me try it again. It's a mouthful. The Alabama High School Athletic Association was basically having a game between Oakwood and Venice Tech. Oakwood, I got to slow down because apparently words are leaving me. Oakwood and Venice Academy. Now, of course, it's a 7-day Adventist school in Huntsville. They actually had a game that was going to be falling on Saturday. Now, for all those Adventist folks out there, they're like, well, no, because that's going to fall on our Sabbath day, which for all those that don't know, for Adventists, that is observed from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. So because of that, the Oakwood Adventist Academy has decided to request that the game be moved, which again, they want to see if they could play at 7:30 instead to go ahead and meet their religious beliefs. That request was denied, even more so that they were basically given a choice to go ahead and play the already scheduled game at 4:30 p.m. on Saturday or to forfeit the game. They chose to forfeit the game, and now they're crying foul. Their excuse, I won't say their excuse. The excuse is wrong. What they're saying is, quote unquote, we weren't asking for a change of stadium or venue or a change of a different day. It was a simple 2 to 3 hour game change, which we thought was a reasonable ask. The other teams participating in the tournament were willing to accommodate and swap game times. However, when relaying a comment from the Athletic Commission, they decided to deny the change. And I just find it funny where a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, it's high school. Yes. And it's a religious school. Yes. But at the same time, they're crying foul because we were forced to choose our faith over a tournament game. No, you aren't. Because this is the part where I sit there and say this is where it gets dangerous. Because for me, I don't like religious schools. Because religious schools, they just have to have that religion in front of their education. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure there's plenty of religious schools out there that do great work, that have a phenomenal education system. Cool. But when it comes to this, where you are basically in an athletic commission that runs other schools that may not be religious or the same religion as you, that you want special treatment because of your religion. And that to me is, in this case, is asinine. You know that the games are going to happen here and that you're going to sit there and say, well, the other teams are willing to accommodate us. Well, okay. But again, you're mad that a decision was made that you didn't like because you felt that your faith was being challenged. You felt that your faith was being attacked in order for you not to play a basketball game. You know, this is what I worry about. You know, like I say about the war on Christmas, Fox News loves doing that. We're all, you can't say happy holidays anymore. You can't say Merry Christmas without being offensive. No, it's not being offensive. It's being aware, because not everybody might celebrate Christmas. Some people might celebrate Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or many other religions out there, because Christmas is basically just paganism that was basically adopted by the Christian church anyway. Spoiler alert. But again, it's just this whole thing of, well, they're attacking my religion. They're not. Sometimes regulations just regulations. They fall on this day, they fall on this day. Because you know why? Because here in Tennessee, championship games were played on Saturdays and Sundays. Nobody complained. Even though we had schools that were Christian schools or Catholic schools, nobody complained. They all played them days. So I just never understood that there are some areas that, yes, where your religion is inferred, you might have a justified reason. But in the terms of high school sports, nah, I just don't see it. You guys tell me differently in the comments what you guys think. But that being said, we're going to move on to our feel-good segment, because usually how the Frack we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's the weekend. Hopefully it's a little bit sunnier than it is here, unless you're in the Northeast. If you are, please bundle up, because apparently winter's not done with y'all yet. That being said, a few stories that I want to show that make you feel good, put a spring in your step and a song in your heart. And as we end the short month of Black History Month, but for the rest of us, we are Black 365. But two headliners actually came up. What I actually did show a little bit earlier on my midweek review, but this first one is literally a National Geographic story of a Black diver who is literally searching her history.
Black National Geographic explorer to ever grace the cover of the iconic magazine, and she is on a mission to find and document shipwrecks. Tara Roberts is hoping to find the wreckage from sunken slave ships, humanizing the story of the slave trade and bringing these important stories to light. Roberts' journey and discoveries are chronicled in a new podcast, Into the Depths. Tara, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So explain how all of this happened. You had a successful career as a magazine editor, then quit your job a few years ago when you learned about a group of divers who were uncovering the wreckage of slave ships. Describe that discovery and how it changed you.
So it all started with a picture. It was a picture in the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. And it was a picture of a group of primarily Black women in wetsuits on a boat. And I had never seen a group of Black women in wetsuits on a boat before. So it completely captured my imagination. And I ended up reading more about them, and I discovered that they were a part of this group called Diving with a Purpose, and that their mission was to help search for and document slave shipwrecks around the world. And I was blown away. I knew I had to be a part of this some way.
And I'm curious what you witnessed with your own eyes and your emotional response to what you saw.
It maybe seems like it should be a really sad story. And I say there are definitely sad notes. Finding something like a shackle, like that hits you. That's not an easy find, especially when you know what happened there and what happened to the people. There were emotions that came up that I didn't anticipate. And these were emotions of pride, of empowerment, of agency. There's a lot of history that has been lost on the ocean floor. They estimate that there are as many as 1,000 wrecks down there. But to date, less than 10 have been found and properly documented. And there's something really powerful about being an ordinary person who just likes to scuba dive and saying that I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to be a part of finding this history, honoring this history, and raising it from the bottom of the ocean floor and back into humanity's memory.
And you use the word empowering, and I'm curious when you talk about it kind of conjuring up that kind of reaction. On your Nat Geo magazine cover, it says, searching for shipwrecks from slavery's hidden past to help heal the present. What is it about the experience that's healing or empowering?
There were, I don't know if you know this number, because this was surprising to me, but 1.8 million Africans are estimated to have died in the Middle Passage. But who's mourning these people? Who's grieving them? Where are the memorials to them? So part of this work in going down is honoring these ancestors and saying that their lives mattered. And so there is healing, I think, in that.
That 1.8 million is a stunning number for sure. In the podcast, you said that what I was experiencing was a sense of longing. I think this is a unique thing for African Americans. Where is home for us? What did you mean by that?
So most African Americans face what genealogists call the 1870 brick wall. And that just means that before 1870, the US Census did not count identifying details of those who were enslaved. So most of us are not able to trace back. We're not able to know what our ancestors experienced. We don't have those stories. We have a lot of the stories of pain and trauma, but we don't have stories of their lives. I wasn't able to trace back to a slave ship, but I was able to, I hired a genealogist and I was able to find out more details about my great-great-grandfather who was born enslaved. And he's somebody whose history I was afraid of. I was afraid it was going to be way too painful for me to face it. And so I didn't really want to touch it. But because of this process, because of going back, because of encountering this evidence from the past, it gave me the courage to look back at my own family. And what I found was amazing. My great-great-grandfather, who was born enslaved, turned out to be an entrepreneur. He was a real estate investor. He fought in the United States colored troops in the Civil War. Like all these details that my family didn't know, we were able to find out. And so now I feel all this pride for my ancestors. And that wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't have started to do this work.
Well, just fascinating conversation. Tara, thank you so much for talking with us tonight. You can.
So yeah, Into the Depths on National Geographic. I thought that was pretty cool just because, like I said before, we don't know a lot about our history. And like, let's be honest, really for a lot of us out there, we don't. And the fact that she's discovering that, as well as, discovering Black history altogether, that is empowering. It's eye-opening, it's empowering, it's moving. And I will definitely be watching that because I'm curious about it myself. Moving right along, guys, I did actually cover this other story again. I keep on talking about kindness and just being kind and being nice. It takes zero energy to be kind. It takes everything in you to be a dick. So I always tell people all the time, there's nothing wrong with kindness. If you can literally just a random act of kindness, just anything you can do, whether it's a day, an hour, a lifetime, change somebody's life, go ahead and do so the world can use more of it. This young man literally made that his life's work, and yet at his already age, he's already magazine's Kid of the Year. Time Magazine's Kid of the Year, I should say.
We want to introduce you to an 11-year-old recently named Kid of the Year, all because of his kindness and his determination to pay it forward.
Orion Jean considers himself an ambassador for kindness.
For me, it can take on so many different forms, from just smiling at somebody or holding the door.
At just 11 years old, Orion is wise beyond his years. It all started 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic when he won the National Kindness Speech Contest.
Kindness is more important now than ever before. At the time that I wrote this speech, the world seemed like it had shut down, and hope was like, where is it? Where is the hope? Where is the love?
Orion, a living, breathing call to action, took the $500 prize money and paid it forward, creating Race to Kindness.
I decided to start my own kindness initiative.
His first kindness project, Race to 500 Toys, was a toy drive to benefit patients at a local children's hospital. He then moved on to a food drive, delivering 100,000 meals to families in need. He then turned to books, collecting and delivering 500,000 books to kids at book fairs across the country. This sixth grader, such an inspiration, Time Magazine named him Kid of the Year.
It's amazing to just think about how much of an impact it's going to make on the person who receives the kindness, and hopefully they'll want to spread kindness, and it's a ripple effect that goes on.
Thanks for that reminder, Orion.
I keep on saying the entire time, kids, boy, if the next generation that saves us, I will not complain at all, because that kid gets it. And unfortunately, and I say it all the time, if you don't think what you do doesn't have an impact on others, that story right there should tell you everything. Because no telling how many kids he's helped get into reading or have access to reading, especially now with all the people trying to stop you from reading stuff. It is amazing that at 11 years old, he's got the mindset of a man decades old in wisdom. Like I said before, that gives me hope for the next future. That lets us know that, maybe we're not doomed by the next generation. But the last story I got is more of a cutesy story. It's almost one of those, you always feel like you always were going to miss your blanket, your favorite blanket, teddy bear, stuff like that. Well, yeah, this one's about a teddy bear that had a interesting trip.
Little morning boost, we could use this one. A teddy bear lost during a family trip is back where he belongs after becoming a star on social media. So Teddy was found last month in Milwaukee's airport. Employees posted pictures of him on social media grabbing a cup of coffee, training to become a pilot. Anyway, lots of people enjoyed his adventures. 5 days later, the Teddy's family spotted that missing bear.
My wife was sitting there, and a friend of hers shared it via Facebook. It was just a fun story. And she was just on her phone, and then she just jumped up and she said, she couldn't even speak. And I looked at him like, that's his bear, without even a doubt.
Well, there's 5-year-old Ezekiel Burnett. You know what happened was he actually tossed the teddy up into the air when they were getting ready to get on their flight. It got stuck in the rafters, and their parents were like, we don't have time to get it. We got to catch the flight. We got to catch the flight. So they left. He was heartbroken. And look what happens at the end.
They both look happy in that picture.
You know, I'm not mad about that, but like I said before, if you're flying, you're tossing your teddy bear up in the rafters, I don't blame the parents. We gotta go. But I'm glad he was able to be reunited with his teddy bear because let's be honest, we all have that. We all have that one thing we don't want to give up, even as we go up, even as we grow older. So I'm not gonna give him crap for that teddy bear. But trust me, you don't think his parents are gonna law that over him for the next 10 years? I'm pretty sure they will. That being said, that's gonna do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you guys for liking, for sharing, for letting this know it's getting uploaded because this is pre-recorded. But I hope you guys comment. I still want to go back and see what you guys talked about the stories we did so far. Before I do get out of here, I got to do some shameless plugging. I do want to first and foremost point out my buddy who will be coming back doing podcasts very soon. My buddy Vaughn at Big BZA Dot on all socials and Avon Westwood on Facebook. We'll be going back to his Smoky Trailer Sundays every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And, of course, the REF podcast every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. But definitely check him out on his socials, Avon Westwood on Facebook and Big BZA Dot on all socials. Also, shout out to Ari and Geek Present Geek Salad for allowing me to share my podcast on their page. I appreciate it, fellas. They are just like-minded podcast brethren like myself who do talk about things of pop culture and things outside of it through an unfiltered but definitely intelligent way of definitely view, and also funny because they are definitely two entertaining guys. So definitely check them out on Facebook as well as YouTube, Ari and Geek Present Geek Salad. So, with that being said, guys, I myself, you can find me on my IG handle at BlockFox447, where I do post movie reviews, video game reviews, sometimes television reviews, and gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. I am so ready to go back to the gym. You guys can understand this week, because I had a cold, I had to kind of stay away from the gym, but now I'm feeling better. I cannot wait for Monday, but that's just me. But again, aside from Blacks 447 doing all that stuff, I am about the motivation. I'm all about the positivity. So I try to post things to motivate and encourage folks because not only do I want to motivate myself, but I want to motivate others. And that's the whole point of the page. Also, the streaming link at the bottom, you copy and paste that in your browser, will take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit. And, of course, the Off Funds podcast. You can definitely like, share, and see every one of my podcasts that I've done from there. Last thing I'm going to say before I get out of here, guys, is please get vaccinated. Please get your shots. Please wear your mask because, again, the world right now is already on fire, again, with the situation that's happening over in Ukraine, with the situation happening with COVID. At the same time, we can only do what we can for now, which is basically, please get your shots together and got them. Please wear your mask. Let's get these numbers down. Not only doing that, but letting those people that need those life-saving treatments that go to the hospital, I'm talking about those for kidney dialysis, blood transfusion, diabetes, and things of that nature. The reason those appointments get pushed back because the COVID bed is taking up space. The more we get the COVID people out of the hospitals, the sooner these people can get back to leading ordinary lives without having an interruption just because they need those life-saving treatments. What I'm saying, guys, you protect yourself, you protect others. But the thing about How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds, persuade individuals. We are simply giving you all the information allow you to make up your mind for yourself, but we also provide a logical perspective, but also perception. But when we do those things, we become informed. We do a lot better as society. We're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first man vice president who was black. We don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's why we find ourselves asking, how do we get Trump? How do we get in this financial hole? How are we still dealing with Putin? How are we still having a repeat of the Cold War from the 1980s? And more importantly, we'll be asking ourselves, how the frack we got here? Thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on playback, please comment this live. I still want to know what you guys think. Aside from that, guys, take care of yourselves, each other, and we will get through this.